somebody picks up a piece of land, then they go to raise it, and then they have difficulty raising it, and that's kind of where they feel trapped because now there's nothing happening. They're making payments on the land, and then maybe what else do they find out?
They're just having trouble getting more investors to the table. If you're a money raiser, that's the education side of it, right? You got to have a little bit of a sales background, right? You know, it helps to have a sales background, but your education level is where that's going to help you because a lot of these guys are going to have questions.
And we're back, Cody.
Welcome back.
Man, so much has transpired.
It's actually my reason that we've been off a little bit.
That's right. That's what I was going to get into and say, congrats, by the way.
Thank you. I'm now like Mr. Tran, who's over here behind the other mic. Just had our firstborn the other week. Very excited.
Amazing.
He's doing fantastic, too. Absolutely fantastic. Mama's great. What are the stats? Man, why you got to ask me that? I don't know the stats. All right. He's healthy and good.
Do you at least know what day he was born?
Yeah, on the 20th. He was born on the 20th, which is a few days before my grandfather's birthday.
Oh, that's cool.
I was trying to hold him in. Keep him there.
Yeah, I'm sure your wife appreciated that.
Yeah, just like Grandpa Melvin Payne. But no, he's doing good. And as you know, Tran had his kid about a month or so ago, and little Mateo's doing fantastic as well. So, and it seems like I tell you, I think we got it really good because Austin, had a kid as well way before us.
Yeah,
and it seemed like they were always like, he's always way more tired, and just it seemed like just ran into a few more, I don't want to say issues, but obviously little hurdles that you always run into sometimes. And I feel like me and Tran so far have had it quite breezy. Maybe I'm overselling it. Tran, what do you think?
Lots of in-law help over here.
There you go. Yeah,
the boy's a good sleeper though.
There you go. That's a big contributor.
I was going to say, I feel like we need to bring our wives.
They may have something else to say. Yeah, they may say they may say otherwise, but I slept fantastic last night on the couch, so I can tell you it is no problem whatsoever.
Well, I'm so excited to get back in the podcast, and especially about today's topic, and we're going to talk about land traps.
Land trap. Why so many flex parks fail before they even start, right? And how many people do we know and have met and have heard from that are trying to buy a piece of land or bought a piece of land and just can't get these things kicked off, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the main reasons that you usually see? Like a lot of times it's people that are raising money, right? That's usually like the number one.
Yeah.
I think people that are in that area.
100%.
Tran, who helps lead a lot of our world engines with guys, and we got folks. Come on in, Jacob. That's cute shorts too.
Yeah.
Running into problems of raising money through doing a syndication or however you're doing it, and the number one reason that most of those people do is because they've never done it before.
That's right.
And so the biggest issue when you're raising money is your first go around of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the hardest. And so there's several groups that Tran and I are actually partners with that build these parks, and they actually have us involved in it, and they use that as leverage. Now, I'm not selling us to do that, for anybody, but what I'm saying is if you are raising money, it's your first time, sometimes it helps to find a good strategic partner with that background, right? That has performed a development, that has, actually executed on something. And I get it, sometimes you don't want to maybe, give away shares or add a partner, but if it gets the deal across the finish line and it gets you that experience you need and it allows the investors to get that comfortability factor that's needed, I think that's huge. And I think a lot of people don't do that, and because they want to try to do it on their own. And then, friend, how many people are 1-2 years still owning the land, still trying to raise money, but still paying prefs on a little bit that's already been raised? I mean, it's not funny, but it's like it happens a lot, and it's because they refuse to find another strategic partner or whatever else that the site may be deterring certain investors. So that's your number one reason, is new investors and raising money.
Okay, so let's make that connection. So you're saying somebody picks up a piece of land, then they go to raise it, and then they have difficulty raising it, and that's kind of where they feel trapped because now there's nothing happening. They're making payments on the land, and then maybe what else do they find out?
Well, they're paying pref to maybe some of the investors that they did raise, but they're just having trouble getting more investors to the table. And I mean, if you're a money raiser, that's the education side of it, right? You got to have a little bit of a sales background, right? It helps to have a sales background, but your education level is where that's going to help you, because a lot of these guys are going to have questions, and it's okay to not have answers. I can't tell you how many times we get questions that we don't have the answer, but it's always, hey, we're going to go find it, and we're going to get it from a source that is highly reliable and verifiable and things of that nature. So the raising money aspect is so key in new developments. Mm-hmm. It's so much easier to do on existing project.
Yes.
Because it's already existing, it's already cash flowing, it's a little more predictable, right? Especially if you can look at year-over-year financials and the market, and you can reach out to a broker like Trainer myself and kind of understand it. But on new development, when you've never built anything, you've never invested in flex, it's the same thing that multifamily new developers run into too.
That's right. And we've personally found this out ourselves, right? That when we went to knock on a couple doors to talk about potentially raising capital, what I'm finding out is that it's a little bit more challenging with flex space, because first of all, it's not a new product, but it's a emerging product in a sense of it's not very familiar to the masses. It was kind of an old school, just a good old guy opened up a flex space for his plumbing or electrical business. And then, of course, you've had some entrepreneurs that did multiple units that they leased out, but these are usually guys that pay for it with cash or already have the money. It's not traditionally a asset class that you went and raise money for.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the capital sources, I think majority of them are unfamiliar with the product. And so when you're unfamiliar with a product and it's not existing, it makes it a little bit more challenging to say, yeah, here's a check, go build it while you don't have any experience doing it. Is that kind of what you found out too?
Exactly. And
because we know some big guys in the industry that are having a challenge raising money for.
Lone wolfing it,
Yeah.
And so that's why we're big on strategic partners. I mean, there's several companies that Trent and I are invested in, and we've got very key strategic partners in those because they bring key elements that we either don't have or just don't want to bring, and because of resources or efforts elsewhere. And so that's why I always say, and I've seen several people that are doing syndications that have actually joined up with other people that do have experience, and it's helped out tremendously. And so that's one of the pitfalls in land traps. Another one is people not really understanding that a lot of times the land matters more than the building, right? Which is a very key component, because sometimes people can be locked into, I'm getting it for such a good deal.
Yes.
Right. Some of the best deals are by far the worst deals I've ever made. I'll tell you that in my life. And so not getting caught up with that, but understanding that the land is really your main key to success. And then the building design and quality kind of comes second after.
That's such a key, because I think sometimes cheap is another word of disguise. There's a disguise for some issues. And if you don't have the experience to dig and to look for those issues, you're about to fall into a land trap.
You'll fall right into a land trap. And, one thing you can always do, you can always fix design, but you can't fix location.
No, you can't.
And so that's what I always tell people. And, so many people will buy oddly shaped land. And, Trent and I have been actually working on several designs because people keep coming to us with like weird oval shaped projects or half moons or like a lightning bolt looking parcel like what we were looking at out there in Missouri for somebody. And we're like, I mean, there's a reason it's so cheap. I mean, it's just odd. And, it may be a good location, but it's very tough to access. It can be hard for tenants to get in and out. It makes a singular roadway going in, which we never like for larger parks, right? Mm-hmm. Just one road in and out. Mm-hmm. That's very, very tough. That's a lot of traffic in one area for a 100,000 square foot park. So you always want to have two entrances. The larger you go on the part, just to make ingress easier, better for, larger trucks, box trucks, all that to get into so they can turn around. And so, being caught up on the land parcel and how they look and, things of that nature, we're very big on it. And we've seen a little bit of everything. We've seen W-shaped land parcels. We've seen Q-shaped land parcels. I mean, we've seen everything. And so I think understanding that is also something that's going to be key, because we see so many people get caught up where the land's cheap, so they just try to make it work, right? It's like, I'm just going to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just not the best case. And then what else do you got? You got zoning restrictions, right? We've seen many people run into zoning restrictions. That's kind of a no-brainer. How do you get over that? You use, there's quite a few different firms out there that can help you out. Civil engineers, people like that are huge. They can help with topography, which we've also seen. Also the, roadway organizations like in TxDOT. In Texas, you have TxDOT, right? We got a guy that's been battling TxDOT for 2 years, still can't build a project. Still trying to get his entryway from TxDOT. So outlining a lot of those things while you're in your due diligence period is very key. We always say, buy everything during your contingencies, right? You don't want to dream about it. You want to make sure all that's outlined while you're doing your inspection period. And so that's where we see a lot of the mistakes made that hinder projects and end up coming in costs way too much because of excavation costs, because of, additional utility costs, because so many of these parks that are being built are in the counties and, some of them don't have certain utilities, or people are having to add, public water wells to them, which are a lot more expensive than just adding a general well like most people did back in the day. If you have sewer but no water, sometimes the cities don't want you plugging into the sewer because you're using your own free water and just giving back sewer. So there's like a lot of little things that are involved with that I think that civils and people like that are very keen on. What else do you think, Tran? What are some key land traps that you're seeing out there with some folks?
I think one of the big ones is a lot of these guys that get into the development, they don't account for what's around them already. So how much flex is in the area. They won't realize how to differentiate.
Because they all go, I can lease mine.
Yeah, I can lease mine. Also, mine's on this road, but also like, hey, some of these areas are very specific on the amenities, right? So like we almost dialed it in where like in parts of Houston, you need 3-phase standard across the board, where normally you don't need that.
No, just 220 amps is fine for a lot of places.
And then another thing is a lot of people are like, well, I don't really need any room for an 18-wheeler to drive through. But in Houston, huge thing that a lot of those guys need.
Ports right there.
Exactly. And so that's one thing that a lot of these guys try to really squeeze in, that 30% lot coverage, but then they forget, oh man, now I have no amenities to give. I'm just like everybody else. Conroe's a great example. They've got way too much flex up there and not enough businesses in the immediate area. And so a lot of these guys don't know how to measure basically a flex per square foot per capita that is in demand, which we are starting to really track very closely here.
Yeah. Well, and that's why if you're new and you're trying to go to a bank and trying to raise money, not just getting the civil and all those guys sorted out, but, getting a really good feasibility study done. We do a lot of world engines for guys too, to help them with comfortability of just kind of understanding what they're going into. Obviously the world engines are, really high level. And so there's, studies out there. Obviously you can get there a little more intringent, but, building the right investor packet, things of that nature, because, those are all little things that you run into, lack of, I think Tran was trying to touch on that, the lack of nearby demand drivers, right? That can kind of scare people out of doing parks. And then, I think also people just getting into it and severely underestimating the cost and thinking they know people, they know a metal guy, they know a skid steer guy or something like that, and just severely underestimating the cost, which is very unfortunate. And anytime we look at somebody's numbers, we're always bumping reserves. We're always overinflating everything because you want to make sure, if you're using a 5% margin, that's a little worrisome for me. I think that thing needs to be at least 10 to 15%. Like I'm really a big fan of bumping it, and that's why we actually end up usually telling a lot of folks, like, look, if you're raising money and this is your first go around, why not just buy an existing project? Like, why not? It may not be the same return potentially you could get once that park is built, but it's just such an easier way to get in and get going. And you don't have to buy a big one. There's plenty of small ones out there. We do plenty around $1 and $2 million. I mean, there's a number of those out there. And so I would say just make it easier on yourself. Don't go build the duplex. You can buy it.
So I think that one of the issues currently in this asset class is that it's the sexy new shiny thing. And so guys are starting
to make it sound easy too.
Yes, and we've got people on social and there's programs you can buy nowadays that make it seem like it's really simple and really easy. Guys, there's people that are selling courses. They're going to tell you it's easier because they need to sell the course. That's why I think this podcast, and not to toot our own horn, is really, really important for people to listen to, because you would get the truth. We're not selling a podcast. Now, Cody might be a broker,
Yeah.
but he's not selling a course. He wants to have successful clients. And that's, I think, really important for people to remember. It's not like, this is not an easy asset class. It's not the hardest by any means,
No.
but it's not easy. And that's just the truth of the matter. You're going to bump into all the same issues that every other developer bumps into. This zoning, permitting, all,
Raising money.
It's all the same struggles, Once you can start erecting the building, it probably is easier than building an apartment complex, obviously, because you got a pre-engineered building. But to get to that point where you can actually go vertical, it's just as hard as any other development.
Yeah.
So that's something I think that every wannabe developer needs to understand and accept. Just because it's a metal building and it's flex-based doesn't mean the development process is any easier. It's all the same until you can go vertical.
Why do you think, let me ask you this, because we actually had a guy reach out to us, I don't remember what day last week, the days kind of run together now, but a guy that runs a course. Why do you think it is such I guess I've never experienced it like this in my life. Why is there such a big contrarian academy, or what else are they called, Tran? Like mastermind. Like, why is that such a big thing right now? What do you think? Like, what is it? It's everybody's doing it. Everybody's there. Everybody's got it. And a majority of the time, some of these calls we actually listen to, because they'll have us go on and talk about small bay flex. And so I was on one a few months ago, and he's like, hey, I got a bunch of students. A lot of them are asking about small bay. Can you come on and talk? And I said, absolutely. And so I went on, I just gave a little brief overview, answered some questions, and then I just kind of stayed tuned in listening. And, pretty much all they did on the call was, the coach of the mastermind is like, all right, who's working on what? And this guy's like, oh, I'm working on this. And he goes, all right, pull up the OM. I'll explain it to you. And that was what he did for each one, is just explain the OM, which I think the broker probably could have done slightly better, in my opinion. But why is that such a big thing right now, the mastermind? Is it just what's hot?
I think it's just what's hot. I think it's, people are opportunistic. I think it's a lot easier to talk about projects than it is to do projects.
So much easier.
I think it's a lot easier to get entrenched in research versus, actually exercising and getting the thing done. Yeah. And I think admittedly, I think that is a fun part. I get myself sometimes get caught up in the research process and reading the books.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, I think partially why we haven't been able to do podcasts between you having a baby and me actually working in the trenches on trying to get these developed. It is difficult, but that's the realness about it. Once you get going, you don't have time to sit around and read books all day. It's now time to apply it. You don't have time even for the mastermind groups. I was part of one, and I didn't update my subscription because I don't have time to sit through another mastermind. I need a master actually building this stuff.
I need to go make mistakes.
Yeah, I need to go do this stuff and stop talking about this stuff. And that's what we're doing. But there's so much joy in the difficulty as well, because in the difficulty, you're becoming wiser, you're becoming experienced. You now are seeing the fruits of your labor. So even though we're talking about some of the hard things, do the hard things. Get those out of the way so you can get to the fun things. That's have a building, start leasing, start making some money, start getting in the positive cash flow section versus negative, because development also is hard from a standpoint of, you start in the red.
Oh, yeah.
So when you find a piece of parcel and you begin to put the deal together and go through zoning and permitting, you're in the red. You're just spending money and spending time, right? And that's why I think a lot of people get more stuck on the research part and even get stuck in capital raising. I know so many guys that they'd rather go raise capital because, quite frankly, it's easier to talk about the deal to raise money for than to actually do the deal,
Oh, yeah.
And so I think our company, where we want to be different with Invest in Flex Space and Riverbank Capital, is we want to show you that we can do the deal. And then if you want to put some coin in it, great, do it. But I think there's a lot of shops, and I just want to tell everybody, be careful for all these shops that are jumping in. And there's a ton of shops right now jumping into flex space, raising money, doing syndications, having mastermind classes. They haven't put one on the ground yet.
Got to put one on the ground.
Put one on the ground, Put one on the ground. That's why we've backed off from kind of talking about capital. We have somewhere several hundred people on our investor list, and I've not called one person. So if you're on our investor list and wonder why I haven't called you yet, is because I'm putting the stuff on the ground, and then maybe later I'll call you.
It's because we specifically don't like you.
No, not. Hey, I like money, except I want you to see the product. I want you to believe in it. And right now, if I take your money, you're giving me money for something that doesn't exist yet.
So, and I'm actually glad you said that. So you're actually working on, if any of y'all don't know, our office out here in Fort Worth, Steven's actually got a project very close by that he's working on back here. It's a really nice revamp and expansion, and it's a good undertaking. It's a big undertaking. I seen you out there, seen you on roofs. Seeing you moseying around that place. How's that project looking? And what'd you say that you've kind of run into, and just kind of give us an update on it, because it's a good looking project. And I think it's gonna be a really nice place once it's done.
Yeah. So speaking of, I think how hard development is. It took us about 6 months to get it entitled. We had to go through like 4 committees to get it rezoned properly.
Did they have a lot of changes to your initial schematics and plans?
Some. They actually liked the project. It was just kind of the bureaucracy of getting through the process. It wasn't that they didn't like it or weren't going to pass it. It's how the city here in Fort Worth is set up, is that in your south side, you have to get through the committees. So, and that process takes about 6 months. Like, for example, the council maybe meets twice a month on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
So you got to fall within that schedule, right?
And it's like 8 or 9 o'clock too. Like, it's always late,
right? And then you've got urban design committee. You have the near south side committee. You have the zoning committee.
Jeez, man.
And so you're getting through all these committees. And by the way, I love the city of Fort Worth. This is not like me bad talking the city. They've have a reason of why they need to go through this process, and that's probably another conversation. However, that means you have to follow the calendar. Just the calendar alone, like. The schedule is like, you can't talk to each one of these committees but every other month or every other 4 weeks, and so it's stretched out 6 months before you get it zoned. So, and I'm thankful, and they passed every committee passed the project, so we're very thankful. Thank you to the city of Fort Worth. But
I think our business was like that. If we did that, if you heard from me every couple months,
So this is the difficulty of developing, folks. This is the difficulty of developing. You have to go through the process. So all these people that are flocking to this asset class thinking they can just put up a building tomorrow, that's not how it works. Unless you're out in the county somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere out there, then maybe you can do that. But then you've got location issues. You got also you got tenant issues.
Yeah.
You got you're out in the boondocks basically.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But if you want to have a good project around a good healthy demographic and businesses that are going to want your building and customers for your building, you got to be in the city for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to come with challenges. But back to the topic. Yeah, it took 6 months for us to get here. We're finally, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we passed everything. And now, of course, the one thing too is that we had it all bid out 6-8 months ago. And so now we're going back to our contract. Hey, we're ready now. And, they've got other projects scheduled. So you have to kind of rile up again your team and to get on the project. So, and obviously that's part of maybe our lack of experience, that that some of the challenges have been a little bit harder for us maybe than others because they already know how the process works.
Yeah.
But but the project is now set to go. In fact, we're finalizing our plans as well to submit for permits. So by the way, we don't have permits yet. The 6 months was just to get approval to say, yes, you can do this project. And then it has to be finalized with permits.
Now you got to get the permits.
So that might be another 60 days, folks. So anyways, but other projects like Midlothian, we're 60 days away from permits. That's almost there. We have several other projects that are in the design phase. But I can tell you this, to Horizon, I think for a typical flex space is about 2 years.
Yeah.
Some
people say what, Tran? A year?
When people say a year, don't believe it.
That's when maybe I shouldn't invest in this syndication on this new development if he's tracking a year. Because, yeah, you're right. You need a lot more time. And, you'd be surprised once you do go down to permitting and stuff like that in some areas, how much if you're doing it in the city, how many cities don't like the look of a lot of flex, right? They they try to categorize it as self-storage. That's why you have so many self-storage facilities that the new ones that are being built now are, 3-4 stories, like almost office looking style buildings, concrete tilt up. Like they are very strict on those. And they a lot of times categorize flex as self-storage. And so, sometimes you're going to have a lot of rendering mock-ups and changes on there just to appease how they want something to look. But what do you think the timeline is? Actually, I got 2 questions for you. What do you think the timeline is from now to it being completed? What would you estimate on your project?
Once we have the permits,
yeah,
I think realistically we should be done within 6 to 8 months.
Oh, nice.
The beauty of flex, and this is why I say once you can go vertical, it really does become easier and it's faster, because if you're getting a pre-engineered building, you're basically just assembling and bolting, or whether it's weld up or bolt up, you're just bolting the building together. And then you get of course, you got your rough ends first. And then once you get to the building phase and you have a concrete foundation, then you're just bolting it up. And then you just get your electricians and your plumbers to kind of do all the finish outs and then do some sheetrock, and you're basically ready to go. I'm obviously simplifying it, but that process shouldn't take that long.
Yeah.
Okay. So within 6 to 8 months, once you have the permits, you should be able to rock and roll.
So I guess let me ask you this now too, since you've started before the tariff situation that we're dealing with now to today, have you seen that impact pricing or timing or anything on your side?
Well, right now, the last time I checked, we're on this 90-day hold, right, with China.
Mm-hmm.
So right now is a good time to order. I've ordered some stuff.
I heard Tran's got a call with China later, though. He says he's going to get all that stuff taken care of.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing
mandarins.
Yeah.
And I kind of look like this.
Oh, yeah.
I think Michael's confused over here.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But yes, it's certainly up about 15-20%.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. If you're getting it from out of the country, we're getting it from out of the country, some of our steel. And so I haven't checked with kind of the local manufacturers or metal steel factories here. But yeah, certainly an impact.
I know one job's gone up a little over 10%.
Yeah.
On one that we're...
I would suspect everybody to be ready about 10-20%.
Yeah.
On average.
Yeah. No, I was just curious because I know you're seeing the stuff. You got bid out. Probably having to get it rebid.
Luckily for our Fort Worth project, the one we just spoke about, I ordered a lot of material before all the tariffs. So they're...
Oh, nice. Where's it sitting? Just sitting out there in the yard?
Well, I can't tell people that.
I got it. I got it in the driveway.
Just come pick it up.
Yeah. I'm sure the HOA likes that.
Yeah.
I got it all sitting in the driveway.
It's safe and locked up. Let's just say that.
There you go. But yeah, so like I said, our biggest thing that we always like talking about is, how to avoid the land traps, right? You start with feasibility studies, talking with city planners, development services, civil engineer, look at topo, utilities, buy with contingencies, not dreams, and, really have as much outlined as possible, because we've never seen it before. We're gonna get us some new mic stands, ain't we?
You know what? These mic stands are annoying me. I guess these Amazon ones are just not
the
work.
Austin Edelman one. Remember? Yeah, Trent, you weren't here, but Austin was sitting in this chair, and I'd look over, and remember, and I just see him doing the
right,
confident, and his head's like lowering. I'm like, all right.
Yep. We're going to invest in some high-end mic stands here shortly.
Hunchback of Notre Dame over here. But no, always outlining that, because one thing that we've seen a lot, and I would really caution people to do, is I'm not a big fan of doing and selling land that's shovel ready, right?
Yeah, let's talk about shovel ready. What makes a piece of land shovel ready, by the way?
I've heard so many different terms from so many different people. It's one of those things where it's like now confused us, right? And
it's bad when it confuses the broker that does this every day.
Because when people say it, and they'll call and they'll go, "Hey, Cody, Mike, I got some shovel ready dirt," and we'll look at it and we're like, "Where's the shovel, man? This place is not ready for anything. Like, it's not zoned properly. There's like, what does that even mean?" And so, but I know there's a big thing out there where people think, "Okay, I bought this land. It doesn't work for me. Can y'all sell it to somebody else and maybe I make a lot of money on it?" Well, the problem with flex land is not all the time flex land is the highest and best payer and best use, right? Sometimes a multifamily group will pay more. Sometimes a self-storage group will pay more. Sometimes retail will pay more. And so if you have a piece of land and you're trying to sell it to just a flex developer, you have now narrowed your window so much to that buyer pool that I think in many cases, a lot of people will be sitting on land. And so I'm not a fan of buying land, getting it shovel ready for flex and reselling it. I don't think there's enough marketplace out there for that. Yeah, I think that a lot of the land that you'll see that's for flex, I mean, you'll be competing with a little bit of everybody on it. People doing other different types of asset classes. There was one that Trent and I tried to do actually out there in Willow Park, and we got beat out by somebody that's going to build medical offices on it.
Yeah.
And he paid substantially more than what we were willing to pay. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. And then also, like I said, you never want to pigeonhole yourself on it. But also, I don't think there's enough demand for shovel-ready dirt. What do you think, Tran? I mean, obviously, flex is huge. Everybody's trying to build it. Everybody's trying to buy land to do it. But nobody calls looking for shovel-ready dirt.
No, I think the majority of people that we work with or that have like land available, typically they're doing like a JV with a developer that's experienced. And that'll be their buy. I think that's more common than the shovel-ready deal, because a lot of the time we'll get the site before we've even looked at it, and it doesn't make sense really for flex sometimes too. Or
because if you're selling shovel-ready dirt, what's the first question we always ask? Why didn't you do it?
Right. Yeah, and also
this is such a great flex site. How come you're not doing it?
I think that's the mystery behind shovel ready.
Yeah, is why are you not doing it? Why is this such a great sale? And because they'll call us and they'll sell us, and I love it. I love a good sales technique. Like, oh, okay, the ingress, egress, the this, the that. And it's like, well, why don't you build it? Well, yeah, it's stuff, things going on in life, and
everybody's got things going on when they're selling lands, right?
I do.
And I was going to get it done, but I just got.
But a lot of them, they'll straight up come out and tell you, like we looked at one out past Conroe, and they're just like, man, we just thought it was a good site, and after bought it, we just don't think it's good. It's like, well, I can't sell you shovel-ready dirt if you don't think it's any good. How am I going to think it's any good? And but that's always the biggest key that we always say is if it's so good, then why didn't you do it? And I think people got caught up in it because it was really big in multifamily, right? Buy land, especially in the city, get the endorsements and get the zoning for it, and then sell it as multifamily land. Like that's a big thing in the city.
I think when I hear somebody
entitlement, not endorsements, entitlements.
When I hear somebody say shovel ready, I have some minimum expectations.
What does it mean? The roughest land you've ever seen in your life?
So, well, no, the minimum expectations are there's water and sewer, okay, that I can tie into, that at least it's semi-flat and it's got the right zoning. If it checks those 4 boxes, okay, and let me also say electric as well, right? I can pull.
Be surprised how many don't have electric.
Right. But those are 5 things: water, sewer, electric, semi-flat, and the right zoning. If you meet those requirements, then you know what? I'm okay with you saying it's shovel ready. But if it's not hitting at least 4 of the 5, it's not shovel ready. I'm sorry.
Ready. It's just land.
It is just. I still got to put a lot of work into it, right?
Vacant land.
It's just vacant land. And so, guys, if you're out there peddling these quote unquote shovel ready land, if it doesn't at least meet these 5 requirements, or at least 4 of the 5, please, stop the mess.
It's just a vacant parcel.
Yeah.
But like I said, the biggest key that I think on a lot of them is not just that, but it's also a lot of times flex is not your highest and best buyer for land.
I had somebody message me the other day. Oh, we've got this great flex land in Louisville. I'm like, oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
How much?
Louisville's close to Frisco.
$18 a square foot.
So at that price,
I was like, and you really expect somebody to do flex here for $18 a square foot? Well, oh man, there's so many people looking for flex, blah, blah. That's the problem, folks. There's some people think this is the hottest asset class in the world, that they're asking just dumb prices. So $18 a square foot.
If my math is right, Tran, that means you need to, at 30% lot coverage, be at probably $38 a foot plus triple net, maybe 40.
And if you're listening,
and that doesn't exist in DFW.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, no shade, I didn't mention your name.
Terry. No, I'm kidding. I don't know this.
Does this land on Bunker Hill?
I don't know.
The Tran's going to try to
You know
source
what?
it out right
I didn't
now.
even ask.
Dude.
Once you tell me it's $18 a square foot, I'm
Well, because we're working on a project we were with Jacob yesterday on in Prosper, high end, very nice area, very good quality. So the highest end flex you'll see 25 plus triple net. That's gonna be some of the highest traditional small bay that you'll see in DFW at 25 plus net.
Yeah.
And that land was an 18 a foot.
no. There's no. It doesn't. You can't. The math ain't mathin', as they say.
But, I will tell you this. One thing that we tell people all the time, if you're going to make an offer at what you think it's worth, land is the best thing to do it on. Because I can't tell you how many deals come out at this price on land and sell at this. It happens all the time. Land is the longest on-market accumulating investment or asset when you compare it to industrial, retail, multifamily. Land sits on the market longer than pretty much everything else does. And so when you get into times like this, also where the economy is maybe a little bit wonky, that's where opportunity can arise. And so we've seen people, we're headed up to Sherman today, right? They wanted a pretty high number. We ended up giving them an offer substantially less, and they're going to do it. And so that's why I always tell people, don't be afraid to offend someone on land with an offer.
Truth.
Do not be afraid to. Because it's when it gets to a certain point, especially if somebody's owned it for so long, they paid so much taxes on it. They're not, the accrual of making money on it is can sometimes start to flatten out, right? Because, you have land in certain areas that is not going up anymore. It's just not. It's just hit its peak and that's it. And so never be afraid to make an offer on land. If it's too low, don't do it through us though. We don't want to be the bad guy. But
that's such solid advice.
Now I'm telling you, and people call us on some of our parks that we sell, and they're like, say it's $6 million. Like, hey, we're thinking 4. We'll be like, hey, I wouldn't submit that. We got people higher. Like, don't worry about it. But I'm telling you, land,
Shoot your shot.
shoot your shot. I bought that land in Weatherford off of Mineral Wells Highway. Remember a long time ago we put that facility on, and they wanted $35 an acre. We got it for $20. We offered a quick close, quick everything. They needed the money. We had some money. Everybody was happy.
You've got to be able to make the deal work.
Yeah.
And if you run your numbers and it doesn't work at 35, but it works at 20, make the 20 offer.
Yeah.
So what if they're offended? You can't make it work at 35. So
show them your math too. Show them your math.
Just
and
do
if you've
it.
got comps and if you've got math, man, show it to them.
We have, we've recently, and we haven't closed on it, so I won't say too much yet about the deal. But same thing. We had a property that was, and I'm making up some hypothetical numbers, by the way. Let's just say, they started $1 million and then they drop to maybe 7. And maybe we made an offer for less than 5 and we got it because the numbers didn't work at $1 million.
Yeah.
They didn't work at a 7. But guess what? Nobody made an offer for less, obviously, than what it was listed for.
Yeah.
And we did. And so, folks, make the offers that work for you.
Yeah. And give a good backup on why. And if you've got comparables, use it. If you've got good math on it, use it. And, I'm a big fan of, saying, hey, obviously, if it doesn't work out now, I want you to keep me in mind. Let me know. Because,
by the way, we just got our phase 1 on it and it checked out.
Yeah,
it checked out really nice. That was actually 2 days ago. So we're going to the closing. In fact, I need to get all that arranged here in the next couple of days because we've done all of our inspections and got through the phase 1 and everything looks good. So we're ready to close, basically. So yeah.
All right. Well, good. But yeah, so that's our biggest takeaway today that we want to talk about is the land traps and why so many people are buying flex land and not building is because of a lot of those reasons. And so you want to get those things taken care of beforehand, so you're not sitting on a piece of land that you got to get rid of.
This is an excellent topic. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be back.
Thank you, Tran.
Good to be back.
All righty. Appreciate y'all.